Hey everyone, today we're taking a look at Turning Points in American Church History, a new book from Elesha, I believe that's how you say that, I hope that is right, Elesha Coffman, and put out by Baker Academic. Thank you to Baker for sending me a review copy. This is my honest take on the book. I'll just step you through my format of encapsulating the main idea of the book, the research behind it, the readability of its style, and then my general reaction at the end. Turning Points in American Church History is based off of the format of a very, if you're in Christian or evangelical circles, if you went to a Christian college or seminary, you almost certainly had to read a book called Turning Points by Mark Noll, a really well-known historian, which talked about decisive kind of turning points in the broad history of the Christian church over the centuries. This book is unabashedly kind of copying that, or at least paying homage to that framework, and that's especially underlined by the fact that Mark Noll wrote the foreword to this book, and that was part of why I was interested in it, because I'm a pretty big fan of Mark Noll as an historian, and I like that Turning Points kind of framework, way of doing history, and anyway, so that was what turned me on to the book, and so the main idea of this book is to take that Turning Points structure, which might be fairly obvious by the just what's implied in the subtitle, but the structure is to tell an historical kind of narrative, but to, instead of trying to tell the whole sweep of the narrative, it's really to focus on particular shaping events, pivotal events over the course of time. And I like that format because it gives you a little bit of the both and. It gives you both of the broad sweep of the time being surveyed, but it also gives you a deeper dive into particular settings, particular events, particular moments. You can do a little bit more work with those moments than you can in that big zoomed out kind of sweep of history approach. So I like that format, and that's what this book is bringing that format to bear, specifically on the history of the church in America. And that's what it's about. So it starts in a pretty surprising place to me. It starts in the defeat of the Spanish Armada in the year 1588, which, if you know your history, 1588 is well before the founding of the United States. So it has a pretty broad scope, and it starts there because that, as an example of kind of a turning points approach, that's an example of a moment that she argues is decisive for the development, the trajectory of the American church, because the defeat of the Spanish Armada set things into motion to say that the English then became the ones who were the predominant kind of players in settling those colonies, and therefore why Protestantism became more of the de facto religion of that area than Catholicism. Really interesting. But that's one example, and then she steps through 13 turning points chronologically from 1588, stepping up through up until the Reagan era, which is where the book ends. So that's what Turning Points in American church history, that's the structure of it, that's what it's about. It is an historical argument, but it's focused on particular key events. And even as she says in the intro, I'll get more of this in my reaction, but as she says in the intro, and Mark Noll says in his foreword, the choosing of those events is an act of historical interpretation in and of itself. And so she's putting forward what she sees as an historian, what she sees as what has shaped the American church decisively over its time. So that's the main idea of the book. Now, the research behind it, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, other than to say it's really good. I've reviewed other books like this that are a little bit more thematic, chapter by chapter kind of thematized approach towards history, and so each chapter does do a little bit of a deeper dive on a particular setting. And the research is really good. She is clearly a serious academic. She's done a lot of reading, done a lot of synthesizing of primary sources as well as secondary sources. And I'm flipping through my copy too, just to double check this. But yeah, one thing I really like, and I always try to, two things I want to point out. There's a little bit of a primary reader kind of tool threaded throughout the book, which by which I mean she takes one or two selections of primary texts from each setting that's being discussed in each turning point, and she provides an excerpt from a letter, from a news publication, from a speech, from something pulled right out of that era, and it's in a little kind of margin or boxed, indexed page setting where you can read a selection. They're very short. It's not like in-depth readers, but it's nice. I think it's a nice inclusion. And then I love one thing I love that books like this do, which this is a very popular level book, which I'll say more about in a second. One thing I love that books like this do is when they include a further reading resource list at the end of each chapter, and she does that to great effect, I think. And so each chapter, each slice that interests you, going all the way back to that pre-colonial history that I just mentioned in 1588, there's a wonderful list of further resources at the end of every single chapter. And that's a nice touch. I love when books like this that are more popular level do that, so you can do your own deep dive if you'd like. Really great. Okay, the readability of it is, I just said a few times, it's popular level. This is a very popular level readable book. The original book, Turning Points, like Mark Knoll, is very similarly put together. This is pitched at someone who maybe is in, I would say this is like entry-level undergrad, college-level assigned text kind of reading, if that level, that style. I found it very, very easy to read, very easy to get through, very enjoyable, very easy to remember. Yeah, very, very straightforward, very accessible. You could give this to any kind of just genuinely interested person who is interested in American history or church history or both, and even if they aren't a student or do deep reading, this would be, I think, a great recommendation. Okay, finally, my reaction to this. So I liked this book quite a bit. I pretty much knew what I was going to get into when I picked it up, and nothing surprised me. Well, I just take that back. I was a little surprised at how far back in history those first chapters went. I was expecting something to start more in the 1700s or late 1700s, but it went back quite a bit farther. So that was one little surprise to me. But I pretty much understood what I was getting when I picked it up, and it met those expectations well. I was really glad to see, I think, that her handling of the history of race in America is really well done here. There's multiple chapters devoted to it, appropriately so, and I thought it was really good. I also really liked, well, I guess one other kind of surprise was there's a really wonderful chapter on the Pentecostal, so-called Pentecostal charismatic kind of revival that happened after Azusa Street in 1906. I just thought that chapter in particular was very, very nuanced and very kind of wide-ranging in a way that I was not quite expecting, and I thought she did a great job paying attention to that aspect of the movement, of that kind of Pentecostal charismatic movement that doesn't really fit comfortably in evangelicalism writ large, but a lot of times gets kind of lumped into it. I'm just really glad to see that was given some good treatment in that chapter. I think that her dealing with the subjects like immigration, subjects like attitudes towards Catholicism, I mentioned the racial history, history towards different racial groups, all that stuff comes and goes in different chapters depending on its appropriateness. And I thought it was really helpful. I think that this is nothing here blew my mind, if I can say that. I read a lot of history. It's a high interest of mine, so there was nothing in here that was like totally off my radar, completely shocking. But I think it's really good. It's really solid. It's really thoughtful. It's very nuanced. It's very well-researched, sensitive to lots of different traditions. I think that the reader of this book gets a very helpful overview of a couple things, actually. You get a very helpful overview of the development and the trajectory of American history. One thing I didn't mention is that there's also some really, especially in the earlier chapters, there's some really helpful material about how the church interacted with Native First Nations, Native American populations as well. So it's all in there. You get a good overview of the trajectory of the development of the United States as a kind of geopolitical body. And you, of course, you get a trajectory, a development of kind of American religious history that is skewed. It's skewed towards a more Protestant evangelical kind of centering. That's more so what she discusses. That's kind of centered in the discussions of the book, and then the other traditions are kind of brought in as they kind of interact with that general Protestant quasi-evangelical tradition. So if that's what you're looking for, I don't know of any other book that presents it so in this, certainly not in this format, but also in such a relatively short, readable, easy to enjoyable to get through package that also has those further reading resource lists at the end of each chapter. So it's just a fantastic tool, fantastic resource, fantastic summary of lots of information. A really, really wonderful text to give to somebody who is interested but hasn't done a lot of reading yet. Someone who wants to get a little bit more into any of those historical contexts or historical background of the issue of race in America and its development. Different denominations, how they developed in the States. Yeah, really helpful. Really, really helpful. So I suspect that by now, if you've watched this whole thing, you probably have a good sense of what this book is doing, what it's not doing, what it's about, and whether or not it would be for you. But I really appreciated it. I'll be keeping it on my shelf, and I'll be referencing it. It's an easy one of those books you can pull off and the shelf and look at a certain chapter if you want to refresh yourself on a particular topic or particular event that you haven't read about in a bit. So there you go. That's Turning Points in American Church History by Elesha Coffman, put out by Baker Academic. Thanks, as always, for taking some time to watch.